Hey guys, it's Miss Young. You're going to be taking notes over the Bill of Rights today. During the video, you'll see slides that cover each slide will be about one of the amendments, and you're going to write the red words that you see onto your paper. This is going to be your notes that are going to be glued into your notebook. We won't really have very much discussion over this because there's really not much to discuss. It is what it is. And so make sure you're able to read your own writing today. So let's get a little bit of introductory. I will play the video for you and then reveal the information.
A Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference. Hello, I'm Alan Scholl, Director of the Freedom Project, sponsored by the American Opinion Foundation. In this episode of our Principles of the Constitution series, we're going to focus on the first 5 of the initial 10 amendments to the Constitution, also known as the Bill of Rights. Here's a question for you. True or false, the Bill of Rights was designed to give more power to the federal government? The answer is false. The Bill of Rights was actually designed to put limitations on government. To start off with, I'd like to bring in our friend Dr. Smith. Doctor, tell us, did the Bill of Rights give Americans rights?
According to the Founding Fathers, the Bill of Rights did not create rights for Americans. Most of them would believe that the rights that we have are what they would call God-given rights. And the Bill of Rights simply recognizes those rights and then prevents government from infringing upon those particular rights. Government doesn't really create rights in that way, at least not in the way that the framers of our Constitution thought of as rights. Government respects our rights by limiting its actions in particular areas in which we do have those rights. And so our freedom of speech exists regardless of what our government does, according to the Founding Fathers. Our government respects our freedom of speech by not passing laws that infringe upon that freedom of speech. And so government doesn't create the right, government merely recognizes the right as defined by the Bill of Rights.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. It was in 1789 that the amendments were introduced as a series of legislative articles by our 4th president, James Madison. 2 years later, in 1791, they were approved by 75% of the states and became the first 10 amendments. The Bill of Rights was designed to protect the natural rights of all Americans, to set limits on what the government can and can't do in regards to personal freedoms. The original concept of a Bill of Rights was extremely controversial. Many argued that it wasn't necessary. One such person who argued that it wasn't necessary was Alexander Hamilton, who said, "Here, in strictness, the people surrender nothing, and as they retain everything, they have no need of particular reservations." In other words, Hamilton feared that by listing specific rights, any rights that weren't listed might be lost. Someone who was very much in favor of a Bill of Rights was Thomas Jefferson, who said, "Half a loaf is better than no bread. If we cannot secure all our rights, let us secure what we can." The Bill of Rights reserves all rights not mentioned in the Constitution to the people themselves or the states. Originally, 12 articles were proposed, but only the last 10 were ratified by the states. The articles not originally included were Article 1, which dealt with the number of U.S. representatives, Article 2, which limited the power of Congress to increase its own salaries, which was eventually added as the 27th Amendment.
Okay, so that wraps up the introduction, or at least the introduction video. So here's what you're going to write. You'll see at the very top of your paper that you have on your desk has some blanks missing, and so here's what you need to fill out. You can get this. There we go. So the Bill of Rights are the first 10 changes made to our Constitution. Remember, amend means change, so you could easily refer to these as 10 amendments, which is exactly what they are. The Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution because the Anti-Federalists wanted to protect our individual liberties. So you got to think back. Why would they be so afraid of our individual liberties not being protected. And that comes back to our experiences that we had while we were under the British control. And finally, we model our Bill of Rights from the English Bill of Rights. This is a document that we talked about at the very beginning of the school year. And it is an older document. It is the first time that the English have created a Bill of Rights that established the protection of individual liberties for Great Britain. So go ahead and pause the video and write the red information that you see. All right, the First Amendment. We're going to watch the video real quick and you'll write your notes.
First 5 amendments. The first establishes individual freedoms such as free speech, free press, and free assembly. The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. In other words, the Founding Fathers wanted the citizens to be able to critique the government without risking punishment.
Okay, so here you have it. First Amendment, it's the freedom of religion, assembly, press, petition, and speech. So I'll put a little gangster rapper here because the acronym for these 5 freedoms is RAPS. So when you're trying to recall the 5 freedoms that fall within the First Amendment, remember the acronym RAPS: religion, assembly, press, petition, and speech. Okay. Now, sometimes you got to think about whenever you're talking about freedom of speech in particular, this comes with a level of maturity. I know I spoke in one class about how you can't just go into an airport and yell the word bomb and say, well, it's my First Amendment right. No, you cannot run into an airport and yell the word bomb. It is completely stupid. You'll be tackled and taken down. So it's not always right to refer to your First Amendment right to say, I can say whatever I want. Because no, you can't necessarily say whatever you want when it can potentially put others in harm's way. So just keep that in mind when you choose to use your First Amendment as a way to get away with whatever you want to say. So pause the video, write down what's in red in your First Amendment box. All right, our Second Amendment. Let's take a look.
The Second Amendment has to do with the militia and the right to keep and bear arms. It states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The founders had come from countries where the only people who had weapons were the soldiers. In fact, the founders felt so strongly about the citizens being armed that Patrick Henry said, the object is that every man be armed.
All right, so this is some of our favorites, pretty popular here in the state of Texas. And that is the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. Wait, that's the wrong picture. Sorry. The Second Amendment, the right to have guns. Okay, so it's kind of funny. You like think, oh my gosh, we have bear arms. No, it's to bear arms means you're able to obtain a gun of some kind, possess it. It is yours. The Second Amendment protects that. Again, think back to why we wrote this. Why in the world would we feel the need to put this into our Constitution and add it or amend it into our Constitution? Because the British soldiers were the only ones allowed to have those weapons. We did not want to lose that ever again. And so we made sure that we made it law for the citizens of the United States to obtain guns. Pause the video, make sure you wrote whatever's in red. All right, Third Amendment. Let's take a look.
The Third Amendment deals with soldiers forcing their way into private homes. It says, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. This amendment was made because British troops were staying in American homes without permission. The Founding Fathers wanted to make sure this never happened again.
Okay, so again, why would we feel the need to put this to put this into our Constitution. Okay, the Third Amendment is you think back to the causes of the American Revolution. One of the major causes was the Quartering Act, and the king did it to us twice. Once at the beginning, and a second time during the Intolerable Acts. So we were going to darn sure guarantee that we never had to keep soldiers in our homes against our will. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to be willing to take care of our soldiers, because that's not true. What this means is you can't force me to keep somebody in my home if I don't want them to, because that's what the king was doing. So we created the Third Amendment to make sure we never had to deal with that again. Write what you see in red, and pause if you need it. All right, the Fourth Amendment. Let's take a look.
The Fourth Amendment focuses on the rights Americans have if law enforcement wants to search your property. In more detail, it says, the right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. The entire Fourth Amendment protects Americans from government harassment or seizure of property without constitutional justification. It is really the only amendment that confirms the right of private property and requires law enforcement to prove legal cause before entering your property for any purpose.
Okay, so this is one that we kind of see on our cop shows. The right to protect your property from search and seizure. So when we say seizure, that doesn't mean, the kind where someone falls on the floor and seizes. No, this is where to seize something means to take. And so in this instance, we're saying that the cops or, British soldiers, should they ever show back up, are not able to just come in and search our homes and take our stuff without having proper documentation that they have a reason to do so. And if they don't have probable cause, they don't have a good reason and get that warrant, they can't come in. And so a lot of times when, you'll see on the cop shows, and the police officer will say, do I have permission to search your vehicle? The guy will say, nope. Well, if the police officer feels like he has probable cause, he'll cuff the guy and set him to the side and go search his vehicle anyways. You have to have probable cause in order to search someone's home. Now, some people say, well, the police officers abuse it. Well, you know what? They're also doing it for their safety and the safety of the community. If you don't have anything to hide, why worry about them searching? All right, so go ahead and make sure you wrote what was in red. Pause if you need to, and we'll move on to number 5. All right, Amendment 5, let's take a look.
The Fifth Amendment covers rights found in the court system, including due process and being charged with the same crime twice.
No person shall be held to answer for any capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life.
The Fifth Amendment also protects citizens from testifying against themselves, and it protects personal property. Did you get all that? Let's find out.
Okay, so the Fifth Amendment. This is a good one. The Fifth Amendment starts out with the right to a grand jury. I know he didn't talk about that. That just means that your case goes to a group of people and they determine if there's enough evidence to actually have some sort of a case to go to an actual jury. And so it's kind of just a process. And again, you got to think about, why are we putting this in here? Because of some of the issues we dealt with Britain. Next, in the Fifth Amendment is protection from double jeopardy. This is kind of strange to us. For me personally, I don't really understand how you could get, accused of the same crime twice or tried for the same crime twice. But I've seen a movie one time. It actually is called Double Jeopardy, where this woman goes and she is falsely accused of murdering her husband. She gets put into prison, and she knows she didn't kill her husband. She knows he's still alive and out there. So she serves her time when she gets all beefed up and works out and stuff. When she gets out, she hunts him down and she kills him. Well, she can't be tried again for that murder because she already was tried and was sentenced and served her time for the murder the first time that didn't actually happen. So that's the only way I can keep that one straight in my head. This next one is the right not to self-incriminate, okay, or to incriminate yourself. When somebody says, I plead the fifth, this means I'm not going to say anything that could possibly make me guilty. So it's your amendment that allows you to keep your mouth shut. Okay, now be wise. Sometimes it makes you look guilty just by not saying anything. So, and finally, we have the right to due process. And this just means that you're going to be treated fairly through the court system before removing life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Remember when we talked about the Declaration, we talked about the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I said, those are all yours to have unless you abuse this in a way that causes you to have it taken away, such as murder. So you get your opportunity for liberty and the pursuit of happiness, I guess, if you're put into 4 walls of a jail cell. But the only way you can have those life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness taken away is if you have due process, which means you are fairly treated through the court system before those rights are technically removed. So go ahead and make sure you wrote what was in red, and we'll move on to number 6. All right, Sixth Amendment. Let's have a look.
Those rights. As evidence, the Sixth Amendment talks about the rights Americans are granted in the court system. In fact, it says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. This amendment covers many areas of criminal prosecution. It states that the trial will take place where the crime is committed. It allows both sides to call on witnesses and the right to legal counsel.
All right, so here, let's take a look. Again, think about why in the world are we putting these in here? Why did the Anti-Federalists, why were they so adamant about having these added into our Constitution? Because of our past experiences. Okay, so Sixth Amendment, it's the right to a quick and speedy trial. Remember, I explained to you how in the Intolerable Acts, if you weren't doing what you needed to do, if you weren't following the military rule, you would be sent to prison. And not just any prison, you'd be sent across the ocean on a very long boat trip where you sit in jail in Britain until they're good and ready to deal with you. This is why we added the Sixth Amendment to a quick and speedy trial, because we've dealt with that before, and we don't think it's fair to sit in a jail. And furthermore, to make sure that you are tried for the crime within the town that you committed the said crime. Okay, so we were being shipped to Britain for something that may have been done in America. And so, for example, right now, if you commit a crime in Houston, you're going to be tried for the crime in Houston. Even if you are from, Canada or whatever, you're going to be tried for your crime wherever the crime took place. Right to a trial by jury. Okay, a jury, if you don't know, is a group of people that are randomly selected. It is a responsibility as an American citizen. We'll talk about that after Thanksgiving break. But it's a responsibility where in order for our government to be able to function as we've written it to function, we need to be willing to serve on the jury. And what happens, you get, I believe it's 9 people are randomly selected. I know I get jury duty notices periodically, and I'll show up. You go to the courthouse. You answer a series of questions. If they feel like you're going to be good for it's the lawyers asking. If they feel like you're going to be good for their case, they keep you. If they feel like, oh gosh, she's going to really hurt the case if we have her on the jury, then they send you home. But keep in mind, it's a responsibility. So if you don't show up to jury duty, technically they can put a warrant out for your arrest, and you can be fined as well. So being a juror is a huge responsibility, but it is important so that we can function appropriately. And what these jury people do is they listen to the entire trial, both sides, all of the evidence, and then they go into a room and they review the evidence and they make a decision. Is this person guilty or not guilty? So it's a pretty big job. This is all under the Sixth Amendment. Keep in mind, we did this because of experiences with Britain. The next part is you get to know what you're accused of. It's kind of like the Miranda rights, like you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say, it's kind of like that. But you have a right. You even see it on the cop shows. I want to know what am I being arrested for? Well, you have a right to know that. And right to witnesses on your side. You get to have witnesses. That's what the Sixth Amendment allows. And lastly, a right to counsel. Again, that Miranda right thing. The Miranda rights don't really come in until much later, another amendment, like after the 10th one. But it does give you, this one says you have a right to a lawyer. And so, again, experiences from the past. So make sure you have written what's in red in your box, and we'll move on to the 7th Amendment. Pause it if you need to. All right. 7th Amendment. We're almost done. Hang in there. 7th Amendment. Where's my mouse? There it is. Here we go.
The Seventh Amendment continues the court theme by discussing the rights Americans have to civil trial by jury. It states, in suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. In other words, the Seventh Amendment protects the integrity of the court system in regards to trial by jury. It states that no judge can substitute their opinion of the facts for that of a jury.
Okay, so 7th Amendment, I'll give you a little bit further explanation. It's much more simple than that. It's basically the right to a trial by jury in civil cases. So anything over $20 will go to trial with a jury. An example I like to use is kind of like Judge Judy. Like she does the petty, I say petty, but you know what I mean. The smaller, not murder, not, robbery. We're talking fighting over money. Like I loaned him $1,000 and he hasn't paid me back. And I have documentation where he said he would and he never did. Okay. So we've all watched at least one show of Judge Judy. That's what the 7th Amendment allows, is that you're going to be able to have these smaller cases. The one thing I'm not sure about on Judge Judy is the fact that I don't see a jury. It is just a judge, just her. But those types of cases are what it's talking about in the 7th Amendment. So go ahead and make sure you wrote down what is in red, and we'll move on to the 8th Amendment. Pause if you need to. All right, so let's take a look at the 8th Amendment.
Likewise, the Eighth Amendment discusses excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment. In more detail, it says, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. In other words, the original states wanted to make sure that punishment fit the crime when it came to setting bail and fines. It also makes sure that those facing criminal charges are treated humanely. The Ninth Amendment is a particularly important one, whereas it protects the rights not particularly listed in the Constitution. It states, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others.
Okay, sorry, the 9th Amendment should not have been on there. So the 8th Amendment, let's take a look. So it starts out with no excessive fines. Okay, think back. Britain, they were ruthless. So more than likely we were getting fined for, you stole a pack of gum from the store and you're getting fined $20,000 because of your crime. That's ridiculous. Your punishment it's kind of that idea that your punishment should fit the crime. This protects you from excessive fines. Next is cruel and unusual punishment, like the electric chair. That's considered cruel and unusual punishment. I think right now there's still a few states in the United States that allow the electric chair. The state of Texas used to have them. I think in the 70s was the last time the electric chair was used. And but there are other forms of the death penalty that are still used. But from what I understand, it is determined from one state to the next of what they consider to be cruel and unusual punishment. I know the state of Texas now does lethal injection for the highest level of punishment. It varies from one state to the next. Some states have completely outlawed the death penalty. So again, that's a part of that federalism where you have the state power and the national power, and the division of those two, but they still have a relationship. So, but yeah, the 8th Amendment protects us from these two things. Go ahead and write what's in red into your box. Pause if you need to. All right, let's take a look at the Ninth Amendment. Where's my mouse again? There it is. All right, here we go.
The Ninth Amendment is a particularly important one, whereas it protects the rights not particularly listed in the Constitution. It states, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people." In other words, just because a specific right is not mentioned in the Constitution doesn't mean the government can deny it to citizens. In fact, anything not listed should be considered just as important as any amendment already ratified. Powers of the states and of the people themselves. It states, the power...
Okay, I'm not sure what happened to my videos, but anyways, I'll fix it later. So the Ninth Amendment is that it addresses the rights of the people that are not specifically listed in the Constitution. Okay, so think about it. At the very beginning, in the First Amendment video, you had some concerns. You had concerns, I believe, by Patrick Henry, possibly, or maybe Alexander Hamilton. One of them said, look, it was Alexander Hamilton. He said, you're taking a risk here. If you're saying only freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, press, petition, you're taking a risk of only getting those freedoms and then eliminating any other freedoms that aren't listed. Well, the Ninth Amendment fixed that problem because now it says, look, even though it's not specifically addressed here, we still get these rights. I even saw on the list that was scrolling at the end of this video was like, you have the right to eat bacon. Heck yeah, you do. Bacon's fantastic. Okay, so Ninth Amendment, it takes care of all the other rights that are not necessarily mentioned within the Constitution. Go ahead and make sure you wrote what is in red. Pause if you need to. Yay, last one. Okay, let's take a look and see what the 10th Amendment has to offer us. You should have some sort of a clue already, as we have talked about it during our 7 Principles lesson. But let's take a look and find my mouse. Seriously, there we go.
Rounding out the Bill of Rights is the key 10th Amendment, which talks about the powers of the states and of the people themselves. It states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. This amendment confirms the fact that if the Constitution does not specifically assign a power, that power is retained by the states or by the people themselves. Now, if you remember from our last session, James Madison originally penned 12 articles, 10 of which were ratified and became what we now know
as the Bill of Rights. Okay, so 10th Amendment, you should be pretty comfortable with this one. Okay, any power not granted to the national government in the Constitution is given to the state government. Okay, so like I said before, this is intentionally created to limit the national government. This is where our principle for limited government comes from. The 10th Amendment is that limitation of our government. Because we're saying if the Constitution doesn't say that the national government can do it, then it can't. It's the states and the people that get those other rights. Okay, so keep that in mind. Hopefully you have filled out your complete set of notes. At this point, I want you to go ahead and walk up, go get you some glue, and glue this into your notes. You are going to have further instruction. You have an additional assignment to do. You're going to use your notes along with a second source that I will have for you. Okay, so hopefully you got all this down and you're pretty comfortable. Coming up next, we'll have a review on your next class period, and following that, you will be taking your test. Okay, so if you have a little bit of time between now and when the time on the board ends, I highly encourage you to draw pictures in your boxes that represent each amendment. And so that way you're starting to make connections between the words and your picture, and you tend to memorize things better when you have multiple ways of viewing the information. If you have any questions, raise your hand and let me know. Thanks, guys.